Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's Power webinar, Putting Paper Tickets in the Past, a Field Ticketing Solution. My name is Colleen Boucher, and I'll be acting as moderator for today's presentation. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a second, but first I'd like to say that we're very excited to have Mike Coble with us as presenter today. Mike is a 27-year veteran of wireless mobile computing deployments and has a wide range of experience with electronic field ticketing deployments across diverse fleet-based industries. Before we get started, I just want to give everyone a quick heads up. The microphones have been muted, so if you have any questions at any time during the presentation, you can use the WebEx chat tool, and you should see the chat icon located on your screen in the upper right-hand corner. Please feel free to use this throughout the presentation, and any questions you have, I'll relay to Mike during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. With that said, I think we're ready to go. Mike, why don't you take it away?
Great, thanks Colleen, appreciate it. Welcome everyone, thanks for your time today. I know we're just having a short bit of a power webinar today to give you an overview of electronic field ticketing, and wanted to talk about the value proposition and just a little bit of a definition of it as well, and to see if it may be a fit for your organization as sort of a starting point to get your feet a little wet on this. So without further ado, many of you who may be involved in some paper-heavy processes may be used to this type of mess and potential inefficiencies. So we certainly see a lot of challenges in paper ticketing systems. So you start with paper forms as well. You have paper forms in the field. Did I lose the paper form? Did I spill coffee on it? Did I write legibly on the form? Did I stop my vehicle and write things down, or was I writing things as I drove? Did I exaggerate my overtime hours? Am I the customer who is calling you and saying, hey, where's my, what's the status of this piece of work? And you're having to do the 3-ring calls between the customer and the driver, field operator, and figure everything out. So a lot of inefficiencies can be done in managing remote workers and field-based workers. So what can we do about it? So, and what is the value of electronic ticketing? So key things, of course, you can reduce your costs, and some of the value electronic ticketing gives you is getting rid of your paper and your paper handling and storage. Paper is inefficient, there's cost of paper, there's environmental issues with paper, storage of it, and a lot of it is, again, streamlining your dispatch. So the ability to streamline how I get work from my office out to the field and back again, is just streamlining that process is the value of electronic ticketing. And then driver overhead as well. Your drivers are spending time managing paper when they, when they have other work, more profitable revenue-generating work they should be doing versus, mailing in paper copies, writing things down that have already been written down at dispatch. So those are some of the overhead you can reduce. And then a lot of it's the administrative overhead is single point of data entry is critical to all electronic ticketing. How many times are you entering the same information more than once in different systems within the organization, be it writing it down on paper, being it entered in accounting, et cetera. So that's the duplicate data entry side of things. So the other side of electronic ticketing is increasing your revenue. So huge advantage is real-time billing. Reduce that billing cycle, get cash flow back into your organization quicker. And accurate billing is also a huge proponent. If I have accurate bills, I get paid quicker and I get paid. The other side of things is lost paper tickets. We have clients that without a paper ticket completed, they don't get paid at all for the work, and that leads to customer complications, arguments. Again, you can lose revenue just by the fact that you couldn't find the piece of paper that tracked all the work you did at that particular job site. And with electronic ticketing, you end up with better customer service, and that's going to generate more revenue and bring you more business and give you a better competitive edge to help you increase your revenues. All right. And then some of the intangibles of field ticketing, lower stress work environment. You've all been in offices dispatching. There's lots of phone calls and voicemails and a lot of activity going on, and it can be a very stressful work environment. Same thing for drivers is the more, I guess, phone calls and texts and things you're dealing with them, it can be more challenging for the driver. Lost paper may equal lost revenue for them. So driver satisfaction is also an intangible benefit that you get out of field ticketing. And that, of course, leads to driver retention. And when I say driver, I mean driver or field operators. You know, staffing is an issue for all organizations. If you can retain good people, that's all the better. It also helps you manage staff disruptions. So when you're dealing with some manual processes, if I lose key people or key dispatcher, or maybe they're away sick or vacation, sometimes it's tougher to fill those roles with temporary staff. Or if I have remote offices, it's tougher to cover from a central office just because you don't have a finger on what's happening with all the workflow across your organization. So that's another benefit of field ticketing. And then customer stickiness, we're going to get into this a little deeper into the presentation, but it can make your customers stickier to you, which again, the stickier they are to you, the more revenue you're going to get out of your customer base. All right. So let's define electronic field ticketing from our point of view here. And when I say electronic field tickets, that can mean bill of ladings, that can be work orders, that can be job tickets. So field ticketing is a kind of a broad term for all the different pieces of paper that you have out there with your fleet. So on the office component, there's a core piece, which is your cloud-based work order field ticket management system. So that's where you're managing all your core ticketing functions and in the office side. And that's your ticket entry, assignment of work, scheduling of work, dispatching, generating reports. So that's kind of the office component. And then on top of that core piece, you can have optional components such as GPS telematics, and some of that benefit, helps your dispatching, knowing where your fleet is. If it's a fleet-based organization, you may have compliance. If you have heavy-duty trucks, I may have to worry about electronic logs, vehicle inspections. So those are some of the compliance modules that are optional. And of course, integration and APIs is critical. It's almost not optional. Those are some of the key pieces that really bring benefit to these solutions, is that all the data I'm capturing and sending out to the field can get integrated back into maybe some in-house systems you already have, your accounting systems, your ERP, et cetera. So then you're going to have the mobile components. So on the mobile side, you're going to have different styles of device. I can have a smartphone. I can have just a simple consumer-grade tablet, Samsung Galaxy type of thing. I can have a rugged, more vehicle-centric specific tablet. So these devices, it depends on your situation, what you need. Are they my own trucks? Are they contractors? Do I even, care about vehicle information? Is it just pure dispatch? So there's right fit device for different needs. Then you need wireless connectivity. So cellular is obviously the most common, but some folks just have Wi-Fi if you're more camp-oriented, and if you do a lot of work remote, maybe you have optional satellite where you have a combination of all three of these and use least cost network routing. And then finally, of course, you need the mobile application. And ideally, this is a modular application. So maybe you're just doing field ticketing, that's one, but maybe you have other requirements. Maybe I have a lone worker requirement. Maybe I have, ELD or DVR. So ideally, you look at a modular solution that helps you grow as your needs grow. All right. So given that, we know when I'm going from a paper process to an electronic process, the simplest, point of view is this: I'm going to take an existing paper forms and I'm going to make them electronic. So that's great, but one of the challenges, that's duplicating an inefficient paper process is not necessarily the right solution. So when we look at field ticketing, we do a detailed workflow analysis. What is happening from the start of your creation of that piece of work right through that work's completed and billed and paid for? So it's a full process evaluation, and you have to address the unique situations. Every client has different situations with their work. What happens if we get pulled off halfway through the job? Is there standby? What if there's a partial complete? What happens at shift change? So there's a lot of little nuances that can occur throughout a day-to-day workflow that need to be addressed in your electronic ticketing solution. And kind of along that line, you may have multiple forms involved today. And in fact, we see a lot of clients when they come to us with 3, 4, 5, 6 different forms, and 99% of the time, those forms are reduced easily less than half off, and it's down to 1 or 2 forms only, because there's a lot of the same information just on different pieces of paper. All right? So it's really a re-engineering of the processes. And from a best practice, we've really found you can't learn a customer how you run your business from sitting in our office and you sitting in yours. We need to go to your office, sit in the office, talk to all the people that are involved in your workflow, and make sure we really understand the organization. So that's one of the practices we do to make sure that the electronic ticketing is the most efficient deployment we can do for you. So once you've kind of established a workflow, you got to create, electronic forms in it. And again, it's not just let's photocopy this form and turn it electronic. You need to add some intelligence to the form. What are mandatory fields before a piece of work is, when that phone rings and you're capturing information from that client for a job, what are the mandatory fields you must have as a minimum job? What fields are automated from the system? Time stamping, mileage. What are some of the drop-down selection lists? So I'm selecting from lists versus typing the same information over again. What data controllers or what information can only the dispatcher view? What can they edit? And again, what fields go out to the driver? There's no need to give the driver a huge electronic form if that driver only needs to worry about a small subset of information. So you don't want to just be bypassing a large electronic form back and forth. So really, defining what fields you have per copy or what can be batch edit. So there's smarts around this form, and the goal is to simplify everyone's data entry, but you want to make sure you're capturing all the critical information you need. So you don't have to call the customer back and get more details because you forgot to add it. And so some of the efficiencies that happen in the office are really around electronic dispatch. So now I have this work in the office. I can, when drivers log in, it's automatically sent to them. I'm not calling them. I'm not leaving voicemails. I'm not emailing or texting them data. Okay. Again, no paper. They don't have to come in the office and pick up worksheets. They can log into their mobile device and go. All information is real time. So as work is completed throughout the day, real-time information is coming back, and you're seeing that in real time in dispatch. Customer phones, I don't have to put the customer on hold, call the driver, figure out what's going on. I have all that information real time at my fingertips. All right. If your work has a lot of on-demand jobs, I can look instantly and see where everyone's at. Are they completed a job? Are they just about to complete a job in that area? And I can allocate priority jobs with accurate information from the field without having to call anybody. If I have the GPS component, of course, I can use closest available vehicle dispatching. Some of the other efficiencies in the office are, again, data entry. I'm only entering data once. The whole premise of this is single point of data entry. Ability to copy jobs. If I'm doing 15 of the same loads or routes for a particular client, I can enter it in once and copy it all and create all the tickets. Drop down lists, define specific information so you're not entering information wrong. And then ticket reconciliation is a big deal. When information comes in, a piece of work's completed in the field, it comes back in real time. I can improve, and if I have any questions, I can call that operator in real time and say, hey, this doesn't quite look right. Are you sure that's what you meant to do in this ticket? So it's not a 2 or 3 weeks later after you've billed the customer someone's arguing it. You can reconcile that in real time versus when the driver can't remember what happened 3 weeks ago. And again, there's no manual entry. You're not retyping the stuff in. And from the accounting and billing side, electronic upload to accounting. You're not re-entering that data for accounting. I have accurate information, gives me accurate bills, same-day billing, all these benefits we talked about. So some of the efficiencies from the driver side are same thing, electronic dispatch. As a driver, I don't have to write anything down. I don't have to go in and get manifests. I don't, it's there. It's when I log into my tablet or my device, work's automatically sent to me. I'm not taking phone calls, voicemails, texts. All right. Again, no paper. I'm not managing writing down paper. I don't have to pull over and start writing down things or write down things when I'm driving, which is dangerous. My data entry, again, I'm only entering data once, and dispatch has entered a lot of it for me. Field checking, make sure I'm doing correct information, and if there's any calculations in the ticket, these calculations are done automatically. Again, eliminating potential for error and reducing the amount of work I need to do as a driver. I can focus on the job, not the paperwork. Again, I do an accurate ticket, I'm going to get accurate pay. So some of the other things we do is a custom workflow for the operator. So when they are going through a ticket completion, we're forcing things to go in order. It's not just a big electronic ticket, say, hey, fill this out as you can. You really step them through a workflow that minimizes their keystrokes and make sure you capture the information you need from your business. So I'm forced them through a ticket completion. An example might be when I start a job, I might be forced to do a job site safety assessment. So I've got to finish my hazard assessment as a step one. It forces them to do that. I'm only showing relevant fields to the driver, and I'm going to highlight mandatory data things. So as a driver, I know what fields I have to enter. And if I don't enter it, it's going to give me feedback to say, hey, you need to finish this before this ticket is considered complete. So you wrap some intelligence around those forms and workflow to simplify for the driver, plus make sure you as the organization gets the information you need. One of the other benefits of electronic ticketing is portals. So I can give a client a portal into my system, so I could actually give them a login. And the benefit is they create work in your portal. So for them, they get real-time insight. They go, yeah, I know I've given you a job because I've typed it into your portal, and I'm seeing the real-time updates back to me when they're completed. Eliminates overhead for you because the customer's entering in, they're doing the data entry for the original work. Eliminates those three-way status calls where they're calling your dispatch calling your driver. And also, when you get a completed ticket, it's going to go right back to that client portal, and it's going to streamline the billing because they're going to see the completed ticket information. So a client portal is a nice feature a lot of our clients use. The other angle is a contractor portal. Maybe you don't necessarily have all your own fleets or remote workers, so the contractor portal allows you to distribute work to contractors. So you would create all your work here, but then you can electronically, essentially the same thing. They would have their own logins, and then they'd dispatch out and manage their individual fleets and drivers themselves. So you maintain visibility here of all the work that's out there. Contractor gets to manage their own fleet. And again, you're streamlining that contractor relationship. No paper, no duplicate data entry, and it also simplifies your metrics when I'm monitoring, hey, which one of my contractors is really performing well? I have excellent electronic data on the performance on all my contractors. But I think the most powerful one is when you have a direct client integration. So in this case, a client, they're going to have their own in-house system, ERP, whatever they have in their own system that's creating work that you would normally do. You can have a direct interface into your client system to bring work from the client out to you. You can dispatch and manage it out to the field, get it back completed here, reconcile it, and confirm back to the client system. So huge benefits. It's full two-way integration with your client. It's very transparent to your client, which makes them, streamline their invoicing and payments for you. It also, of course, back to the original theme, there's no paper in this process. And your data entry is reduced because your core data is coming from the client system to you electronically. Eliminates a lot of overhead. And fundamentally, this is very sticky for your client. They're going to be more likely to give you work if they can give you work electronically. They don't have to call you. They get real-time updates. It makes for a very strong relationship with your clients. So in different industries, there's different, integrations. We have done a lot with people that have in-house ERP systems for their clients. A few other samples down below here for like oil decks, CNRL Opland, some of the oil and gas systems that we've done for field ticketing. So, but yep, sometimes you still need paper. So your electronic system does have sport printers, scanners, and maybe cameras. And what this does is let you maybe have a piece of paper that has to be signed and left at the job site, but I can now take pictures or scans of it and have that attached to the electronic paper. So even though there is some paper involved in this process, you're still getting the real-time updates back to the office. And I don't necessarily need that hard paper copy to get mailed in immediately or anything, because I'm going to have electronic copies that are scanned and come back into the office. I can always pull up a scanned copy and get that to my client at any point in time. You still have the single point of data entry, and you still fundamentally have less paper management because you're just managing electronic files that have been scanned or pictured. All right. So I know we've covered a lot in a short, it's just a short time period we had today, and I'm a few minutes over, but fundamentally field ticketing, is a right fit for you. Well, it can reduce your costs through a lot of different ways. It can help you increase your revenue, make you more competitive, make your customers sticky to you. And then it brings an intangible of a lower stress dispatching environment and driver environment, and improve that staff satisfaction. Let your resources focus on doing more versus, a lot of menial tasks that don't generate you a lot of revenue. All right. So that's it. I know we covered a lot. So if our short period of time, but I just want to open it up for so many questions.
Thank you so much, Mike. That was really wonderful. I think there's a lot of valuable takeaways in what you talked about today. We did have several questions come through, so we're going to go through them. We'll do as many as we can in the time that we have left. Any questions that may go unanswered, we'll be happy to follow up directly offline, but we'll just jump right in. One of the first questions that came through was someone wanted to know about if the system can be built on a per customer or per workflow basis. Is it able to be custom built for workflows that look different from each other? You know, anything from JSAs to sealed on, sealed off. How much customization is available?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a framework, and within this framework, it allows us to tailor the workflow and the format and the forms, a number of forms on a per client basis. So our goal is not to go, hey, here's how we do work, you should change your business to ours. Our goal is to, here's a framework that allows us to take your forms, take your workflow, you know, and go through those evaluations, and then change our, you know, using our framework, build that around your workflow. So it's not we're not, any re-engineering of workflow is things that we've mutually come across that say, hey, why don't we do it this way? It's more efficient. So yeah, absolutely, it's tailored around each individual client. It has a completely different look and feel than the next one.
Sounds like it's built to work smarter, not harder, which I think is really valuable. One of the other questions that came through is someone was wondering how long a deployment typically takes on a project. I'm sure that's dependent on scale, but from your experience, about how long, you know, does it take to deploy?
Yeah, so a typical deployment is probably around the 8 to 12 week process. You usually spend about the first, you know, 2 to 4 to 6 weeks on the detailed process review, specification design, you know, looking through all that and making sure we've identified everything, basically everything on paper, and building out the workflow, identify and have a mutual agreement on, hey, this will work for us. This is how we want it to go. And then it's usually about another 4 to 6 weeks from a deployment perspective. So that gives us about 8 to 12 weeks on a typical deployment.
Okay, that makes sense. Not too terribly long to get things up and running. And then it looks like this will probably be our last question that we have time for, but it's a little broad. But could you describe the typical process to get an organization off of paper and into an electronic ticketing system? What does that look like?
Okay. So, from the initial, attack of that, we usually like to get from a client, hey, provide us copies of all your paperwork you used today, preferably filled out as you would in the field. Give us samples of that. We'll take that, we'll have a review of that, then we'll get with the customer and kind of go through all that and sort of do a bit of a preliminary review to make sure we understand, and someone from our project deployment team understands, your workflows today. From that, we will generally are able to come up with, okay, here's what we think from a cost perspective is, because that's always relevant. And from that cost perspective, usually we'll have a, go or no go, and let's proceed with that. And then kind of a next step is we come on site, do our detailed on-site review, fine-tune the specification, and and then from that, after that, we would evaluate, hey, was there any different integrations or anything, surprises that we came up with. And the whole goal is to eliminate any surprises, make sure that our end customers are very comfortable with what's going to be delivered. No one likes surprises with a software deployment, so we always go through this staged deployment process that there's sign-offs and there's confirmations and everyone's in agreement before we go on to the next step. So it is a very iterative process with our clients, and things always change as we get through a project. But that's generally the kind of plan of attack we would have on a deployment.
Sounds like it's a successful strategy and that it works well. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I've taken a lot away from what you've talked about. I'm sure that our attendees have as well. We are going to wrap up there. Thank you again for joining us, everyone that did. Any questions we weren't able to get to, we'll certainly follow up directly offline with you on those. We're going to hang around for just another minute or two, but we'll wrap things up there. Thank you, Mike, again for joining us. Thank you to everyone that joined us live today. The recording of this webinar will be emailed out tomorrow, so feel free to share it with any staff that you think might benefit from watching the webinar. and we hope to have you with us next time. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, you're welcome. And like you say, this is very much just a very high-level introduction. A more detailed conversation with viewers, we're certainly available for that. And that we can generally spend hours going through this in more excruciating detail as you need it. But I appreciate everyone's time today, and look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.